Welcome back. This is the second part of our Foundations of Digital Health Architecture course. And in this part, we're going to look at the building the digital health ecosystem. We're going to look at what are the components of digital health ecosystem. And then we're going to look at how information flows across healthcare systems. And we're going to emphasize that the digital health ecosystem is an enterprise architecture product. Now, the goal here is not necessarily to present health information systems as isolated technologies, right? We know that's not what it is. The goal here is to emphasize that this system has an architectural purpose, right? Has information dependencies. There's a rationale behind the design, and we do acknowledge that there are also integration challenges, and we're going to look at how we create a cohesive digital ecosystem from an informaticist's point of view. Now, the question is, what is a digital health ecosystem? And we've tried to define this as a coordinated network of people, health information systems, infrastructure, standards, and governance that work together to capture, exchange, manage, and use health information. Now, there are several characteristics of a healthy ecosystem. They are connected to each other. There's a coordination. They are coordinated. They are interoperable. They can talk to each other. They are reliable, they're scalable, and they're secure. Now, I like to use the analogy of a natural ecosystem. Think about in Nigeria, think about our jungles and our forests, right? The trees there, the plants there, the animals there depend on their interaction, right? So the forest as an entity as a whole depends on the interaction of the plants, the animals, the water, the climate, and all that, right? And um, in the same way, our digital health depends on the interaction of people, workflows, applications, infrastructure, and governance. If one component is weak, the whole ecosystem is affected and stand the risk of collapsing. I'd like to point out from the visual on your screen that um, the EHR, which when we talk of digital health, everybody believes the EHR is the be all and all of our digital health application. But looking at that diagram, you can see that the EHR it's only one component of a much larger ecosystem, and that should be emphasized, right? Every application contributes unique information, but the real value only emerges when they exchange data. Yes, the EHR is, I'm gonna admit to this, is the heart of that ecosystem. But there are several other systems that feed into the ecosystem, and we're going to take a look at them in a minute. Now, when we talk of a digital health ecosystem, just like my analogy, excuse me, just like my forest analogy, right? There's an element of maturity that comes in the system, right? Are they able to support um, all the entities and individuals and animals and plants that depend on it? Now, most discussions about digital health focus on technology. We're gonna buy new e-HRs. Are we hosting these on cloud platforms? Do we implement artificial intelligence? Do we have mobile applications? Now, while these technologies are important, they are not reliable indicators of digital maturity, right? When we talk of digital maturity, where this is not measured in terms of the number of computers or software applications a facility has, right? It is measured by how effectively information flows across the stakeholders, across people, departments, and the other systems to support patient care, right? And like we've said before, digital transformation is not necessarily a technology acquisition strategy. It is an information management strategy. Now, a hospital can invest heavily in software and yet, continue to experience all the challenges of fragmentation in their data collection, right? Fragmented care, duplication of work, and poor decision making because the information remains isolated within the department. That doesn't show digital maturity. So, as our image on the slide shows, digital maturity is fundamentally about the organization's ability to transform routine clinical documentation into information they can act on, actionable information, so to say, right? So this requires systems that are connected, that are coordinated, right? Systems that are connected, workflows that are coordinated, and some extent governance structures that ensure that information is accurate, timely, and underline this, reusable. Okay, so from our in our diagram, you see a roadmap for advancing from an isolated digital solutions to a learning health system. So we have the digitized process. They are connected, they are interoperable, they are data driven, and they form the learning health system. Now consider the two hospitals shown in the slide. Hospital A, I mean, they've invested so much in software applications, right? They have 18 different software applications. They have and each of those applications has its own patient identifiers. They still use paper referrals. There's duplication of documentation. Their reporting process is still manual, and they do that monthly. And there's limited information sharing. Now remember, they have 18 different software applications that they use. Compare that to Hospital B. They have 6 integrated systems, one single patient identification. Their referrals are done electronic. Information is entered once and reused across those 6 systems. And there's automation of their reporting processes using dashboards and coordination of information technology. Now, which of these hospitals do you think is the more digitally mature, um, has more digitally mature health system? And my point here is that when we evaluate a digital health program, the idea is not how many systems do you have. That shouldn't be the question. The question should be how many times is the same information entered, right? Do you go to the lab and then you enter the demographics of that patient, and then you go to registration, or you go to registration first, and they collect the demographics, You go to lab and they collect the exact same material or information. Where does the information stop moving? Who cannot access information they need and why? And what decisions are delayed because information is available? These are the questions that reveal architectural maturity. And as an informaticist, these are the questions you need to ask before you can begin to design the optimal architecture for the facility. Now, when I made a comparison between the hospital that has 18 systems and one that has six systems, yes, the one that has six integrated systems is more mature, but not because it has less number of systems, right? Um, Healthcare is one of the most information intensive industries in the world. They generate a copious amount of data from patient encounter to clinical observations to lab results to you name it, up to public health data, right? These information types have different workflows and performance requirements and storage needs and users, and therefore they cannot all be managed in one system. That's difficult, right? And so our guiding question for this slide is why doesn't one system manage everything? And that's because, like I said, healthcare organizations generate a diverse, not just the sheer number, not just the sheer quantity, but the diversity of the types of information um, is huge, right? They differ in structure, they differ in purpose, they differ in speed, they differ in regulatory requirements. So it's almost impossible for a single application to effectively manage all this data. And so, as an architecture principle, we said that specialization um, optimizes the departmental performance, and integration optimizes the organizational performance, and both are essential. So rather than forcing a single application to manage every function, right, from clinical to diagnostic to electronic um, uh, um, um, referrals to prescriptions, e-prescriptions, and all of that, rather than forcing a single application to manage every function, healthcare organizations should adopt a distributed architecture, right? And what does that mean, right? It's specialized systems are designed to excel, to be the best within their domain. So, for example, a lab system manages specimen workflows and quality control, while a radiology system, for instance, manages imaging studies and reports, right? Different functions, different requirements, different ways of storage. Now, the role of architecture is to ensure that these systems work together as a cohesive whole. Now, this distinction is critical. The existence of multiple systems is not by itself a problem. It's not by itself wrong. It's not problematic. The real challenge and your role when you're working on architecting an information system. The real challenge comes when these systems fail to communicate effectively. Now, as the informaticist, it is your role to evaluate whether the architecture enables, again, I'm going to say it, timely, secure, and meaningful um, exchange of information across the enterprise. So my point here is a distributed system by itself is not really wrong. It's not really evidence of fragmentation, right? The challenge would be making sure that the systems you're building, systems you're designing, systems you're architecting must talk to each other and complement each other. That's that's your role as an architect, a systems architect. Now the question is, when we talk of designing digital health ecosystems, right? Um, when we talk of enterprise architecture of a health system, the question is, how do independent systems become one coordinated system? So enterprise architecture shifts the focus from implementing individual software to designing an information ecosystem that advances organizational goals, right? So enterprise architecture allows you to design how the people in the organization, how the workflows in the organization, how the information, the applications, and lastly, technology work together to achieve the goals and aims of the institution, right? So the enterprise architecture provides the blueprint for how an organization functions as a coordinated system rather than a collection of independent um, software in different departments. So in healthcare, it ensures that technology investments align with clinical care, operational process, and strategic priorities. Now remember that the strategic priorities of the organization, the operational processes of the organization, the clinical care of the organization, those take priorities before you can start talking of what technology you're going to deploy to meet those needs. So think of a hospital as a city rather than as a building, right? So you need roads, utilities, transportation systems, zoning, and all that. They must all work together. In the same way, a digital health system requires coordinated planning across workflows, information applications, infrastructure, and governance. Our role as the informaticist architect in this is to contribute by translating those clinical requirements into architectural decisions, making sure that the technology investment create lasting organizational value. And I should call this out. A technically successful implementation can still fail if we have not aligned that implementation with our clinical workflows or the organizational priorities or the governance uh, um, policies. Why do Specialized health information systems exist. In other words, why are health systems designed around functions rather than patients? Because if they were designed around patients, we'll probably just have one, right? And dump all the patient information into that system. But as we saw several slides ago, that is not the ideal um, way to architect a system. Now, specialized system evolved because, as we said, each clinical department has unique operational requirements, right? So, like the lab must track their specimens in a certain way and do their quality assurance in a certain way, right? They generate information unique to them. Unlike the pharmacy, for instance, right, that prioritizes medication safety and e-prescription and inventory control. So these differing needs require tailored application, right? But specialization also introduces a risk. It can lead to isolation of information. And again, I can't say this enough that our role as informaticists architecting this system is to make sure that each system contributes its own unique information to this shared ecosystem so that there will be there will be coordinated care and organizational learning. That's what we mean by health systems architecting.